and meet other parents. Tonight, I'm so excited. We're back with Bridget. Bridget is a parent advocate, and I'm really excited to talk to her more about IEPs and the whole start to finish what to expect. But before we can do that, we have a quick, we want to show you that we have our marble maze. There is a promotion going for this. Check our Lackey Kid page at the end of the show and you will see it. The marble maze is awesome. It's that soft mink, so it's really soft and comforting. It folds up extremely small, so you can tuck it in a small purse, a backpack, wherever, and bring it with you. It works those fine motor skills by getting you to push the marble through the maze. And it's quiet, so it's great for busy work. It's great for going out and keeping the child busy. So again, check the Lackey Kid page at the end of the show for more information on our marble maze. Now, again, like I said, we are talking to Bridget this week. Hi, Nisa. Welcome. And here's Bridget.
Hello,
hey, Bridget,
Jen.
welcome.
How are you?
Good. I am really excited about tonight because I've never actually sat down and went with the IEP from start to finish. And I'm excited that you and I sat down yesterday and decided that that would be beneficial.
Right.
So just a note to everyone.
Ready for me to jump in?
Yeah, one sec. A note to everyone. Jason has posted the free sensory fidget marble maze link, so check that out after the show for our special promotion. Okay, Bridget, getting back to you. What has to be in the IEP? I mean, I'm a new mom. I've never done an IEP. I've never dealt with a school with autism. What do I have to look for?
Okay, so I think I'm going to back up just a little bit and tell you the process. So think your child, there's something, either a learning concern that you have for your child or a behavioral concern that you have for a child. The first step in the process is what's called child find. Someone makes the request to have your child evaluated. The parent can make the request, caregiver or daycare can make the request of the school, or teachers or someone in the school can make the request. So let's say you have a concern with behavior and academic. I can kind of touch upon both of those. You put in you request of the school evaluation be done. If they agree to that, then the evaluation is completed in the areas that are related to the suspected disability. So if you're concerned about reading assessments would be done. If you're concerned about behavior, an FBA or a functional behavioral assessment can be done. And that involves the BCBA, a behavior person from your school. Once those evaluations are done, then an eligibility meeting will be called, and eligibility will be decided whether your child is found to have a disability and is now eligible for special ed services. If your child goes to the next step and you're eligible for an IEP, then an IEP meeting is scheduled. The IEP meeting is supposed to be scheduled at a time that is convenient for both parties. So when the school sends you a date and a time, if you can make that date and time, absolutely try. But if that date and time is not conducive to your family or your work situation, it is within your prerogative to contact the school and say, thank you for this time. It just is not working for me. Can we find another time? Because you should be working together to find that time.
Honestly, I've done it. And another thing that maybe people don't know is I've conference called in my husband to IEP meetings.
Right.
Because there was no way our work schedules and our life schedules, he was out of town. Right. So don't feel bad about asking, can we make
absolutely not
this exception?
Especially if you work a half hour to an hour away from the school, then that travel time impacts your entire day. We're calling in, or now with the video conferencing, that's being done now. So they'd schedule the IEP, the IEP is held, IEP meeting is held, and the IEP is written at that meeting.
Okay.
Once the IEP is written and parents consent, services are provided, and then progress is measured throughout the year. So I think that I just want to help parents to understand, once you've requested assessment does not mean the IEP has started. You say, I have a concern with my child. The school must react to that request.
And
each state is different.
Yes. South Carolina is 30 days.
to make the request or to complete the assessment?
From a request to assessment has to be done.
So in Massachusetts, it's you make the request, the school has 5 days to get back to you in writing saying that, yes, they'll do the testing or a reason why they wouldn't. And then once the evaluation, the permission to test is signed, then there's 45 days to meet.
Okay.
Or 30 days to complete the assessments. So that's sort of where you go. When you get to the IEP meeting, people who should be in the meeting are parent. If the child is over 14, the child can be invited or needs to be invited and can choose not to go. A stakeholder from the school, which means someone who can make the financial decision, someone who can say, yep, we're going to do that. Otherwise, if that person is not there, it lends itself to having the school say, well, we don't know if we can provide that. We have to talk to our, our special ed director. That can't be the case. Everyone in that meeting has to be on board with everything that's going to happen. So in your team meetings, you need a general education teacher. It becomes tricky when it's high school or middle school or anytime a child loops. I always request that the teacher that is responsible for the area that is your child's weakness should be there. And you can make that request. I've had meetings where the child was weak in reading and in math, and I've asked for both of those teachers to be there because they need to see the full. They need to see the full. You can always request, like I've said before, you can always request. How they respond is different. But if your request is, geez, I really think math is the issue, but I think math is a concern because his reading disability is such that he can't access the word problem. So it's better to have the full team. If someone has done an assessment of your child, they should be at that meeting. If someone provides services for your child, they should be at that meeting. That all of these names would be listed on the invitation that you receive. And it may have their language pathologist, occupational therapist. If for some reason they can't attend, you have to be asked to give permission for that person not to be in attendance. So if you go to the meeting, I always say, and you have really concerns about the FBA or behaviors, but there isn't anyone at the table that's responsible, specifically like a BCBA or behavior specialist, you can say, I think we can't hold the meeting today because my concern and the expertise is not at the table.
Right. And they can't force you to do the meeting without that person. Let's make that clear. If you say this person's needed, then
they could say, let's continue to hold the meeting, but then you would have more grounds to say, if you were to go to mediation, to say, I just am not comfortable with, because this person wasn't at the meeting, I do not accept this portion of the IEP. So it doesn't really make things make sense if the school were to still push on for the meeting. I'd be curious as to what their end goal was going to be with that. So that's at the meeting. You're also allowed to bring anyone you want. You can bring an advocate. You can bring just a friend who can listen or take notes. Especially if it's your first meeting, I would not go alone because it's so many people have done assessments and everyone is a specialist in your child, but the whole story. And so I would just caution you not to go alone. So then when we get down
to the don't go alone, Dave was traveling for work and I went thinking, oh, it's just preschool paperwork. And then they noticed that she had Head Start or early intervention. And they're like, we need to pull you down here. And they pulled me into the psychiatrist's office and don't go alone.
Right. And it's just better, especially in the first meetings, because this is your child, this is your baby. You grew this. And now what is everyone going to say about them? Right. So now if we talk about the contents of the IEP, a child's been decided, yes, your child has a disability. Yes, it's impacting their ability to make effective progress in the curriculum. Here are some things that the country, the USA, the United States Department of Education says these 10 components have to be in every IEP, and I'll go through them. But what they've said to every state is, but you can add more things. So a state can't remove any of these 10 components, but they can add to these 10 components. I'm lucky to be in Massachusetts and to have gotten my education in Massachusetts. And we have we err on the side of the families as far as our services and the child. And so we have a lot more, I find, than other states. So you can't have less than what the federal government has, but you can have more. So the things that the federal government wants you to have is to make sure the IEP shows current performance. How is your child currently doing? Not what, how are they doing in second grade? Now they're in fifth grade. What is your child currently doing and is able to do? Another piece is annual goals. If in testing there's a weakness, there needs to be a matched goal to that weakness. So if there is a weakness in reading comprehension, but not reading decoding, the goal should be reading comprehension, not just sort of blanket reading. If it's decoding, it should be decoding. If there's a math weakness, there should be a math. But also, I always stress in the start is getting behavior rating scales done, which would be if you had a concern with your child's behavior, an FBA, but also behavior rating scales. And common ones are Connors and the BASC. And that information can say self-regulation. All right, then we need a goal. If the child has a hard time attending, there needs to be a goal to support and strengthen that weakness. So annual goals need to be created. Underneath the annual goal are benchmarks, or just breaks down what that goal is. So if my goal was my child needs to be decoding and know all 6 syllable types, the benchmarks would be 1 syllable type would be my child will know the closed syllable. Second objective, your child will know the vowel consonant E syllable. Then your child will know the R-controlled syllable. So it breaks it down. So the goal is the big piece and the objectives are the smaller pieces, how you're going to reach that goal. Another piece is special education and related services. So related services would be, special education would be reading, writing, math, those things. The related services would be speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, all of those things and how they tie into your child's education. It also needs to be stated if there are aids that need to happen. If your child needs, say, a fidget, like the marble maze, those things need to be listed within the IEP.
And you would include flexible seating with that as well, correct?
You would include flexible seating. In some just want it to be flexible seating. Sometimes I like to give specific things, especially if your child's in 4th grade and you know the wiggle seat doesn't work for my child, but the ball, it absolutely works for my child. So you'd want to be able to have some specifics. When they're younger, you want to be able to test drive a lot of different ones. So just saying flexible seating is great, but that's a great point to have. It also includes modifications. So if your child needs to have instruction done in a different way, they need, say in reading, they need more of an explicit phonics instruction that is individual or small group. That's sort of where the modifications will come in.
And the modifications also, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're things like extended test taking, separation for test taking.
Yes, and those are accommodations. So the modifications would be you're changing the content. Accommodations is you're changing how your child accesses that.
Okay.
Another piece, so this is an important part. So these are what the federal guidelines are. Like I said, your state can do more. There's actually no one form that the whole country uses. So every state uses its own IEP form, which it can be difficult. And I imagine for military families who travel from state to state more often than not, that must be very, very difficult for them. I feel for that situation.
It is. We have a number of military families that struggle with when they move, transitioning everything.
Right, which becomes more important. And I know I've asked for the link to be put back up for families to get in touch with their state's Family Support Resource Center.
Jason, if you can post the link for us, please. Guys, I'm going to have Jason post the link for the national and for the state. There's 2 different ones. The ones he just posted were IEP guide.
Yep. So that's just the IEP guide from the US DOE.
So this is the guide that everyone has to follow
Well, these are the minimum components that have to be in the IEP.
Yeah, the
The
minimum.
one is the resource centers. The other link would be for the resource centers. Like Dennis and I work with the Federation for Children with Special Needs, and that's sort of our clearinghouse for information.
And here is the resource center link now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Again, guys, Dennis and Bridget have been with us now 4 weeks, and you know what they do. You know they're advocates. So listen, because they have Bridget. How old's your special needs child now?
He is 21.
So Bridget's been there, done that, worn the t-shirt.
I have. I really, really have. And I taught special ed for 22 years. So Dennis and I think, are going to start doing some blogs and some podcasts of our own that we'll link up with you guys, specific to IEPs. So,
Bridget, I have a real quick question for you.
Please.
From our comments that relate to what we're talking about at this moment. Angela, who's a longtime member, Arizona actually, if parents request that the teacher's aide come, the one that works specifically with that child, they're not allowed to go. Is that not a...
Well, and that's right. And I'm not sure regulation wise. I know that happens a lot in Massachusetts too, is not having the para attend. And I think the para's usefulness would be in a parent teacher conference.
Okay.
But having the para attend, I guess, makes sense in this way. A school has to provide a para. They don't have to provide that para. So that Julie isn't matched with your child forever. It just so happens that on this day, Julie's your child's para. Maybe for that whole year it happens, but the school does not have to delineate exactly one person. They just have to say they will provide a para.
Right.
So I think that's why.
She goes on and asks another question, Bridget. Okay. What if the parent asks the school not to teach the child multiplication because the psychologist said the child is losing the basics as the school forces new things on the child?
Well, it's a catch-22 because your child still needs to be presented with the current curriculum, with the Common Core, with that grade standards. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes in, it may be at a time when whatever strategy they're using to teach multiplication does not match the child's learning style. And so it's that memorization of multiplication facts, to me, is crazy, particularly to someone who has a short-term memory issue, which then creates a long-term memory issue, when knowing why things are multiplied is an important skill. Knowing what 6 times 6 is not as important as what it represents. Well, and so if you can...
Let's make something clear. I know which child she's speaking of. Her and I are actually friends. The child has the cognitive ability and the mindset of a child much, much younger. Mm-hmm. Like Riley's age or younger.
So this is where we get into the state assessment conundrum. Because all of our kids, if they're in the 5th grade, are taking the 5th grade test. And so the school has to provide instruction on 5th grade content, as well as all of the other splinter skills.
Right.
So it's a tough call, and it's an understandably frustrating call. But that's where working with the school becomes more important. Teaching the concept, which I think is what the Common Core wants,
right,
is more important. Teaching a calculator would provide a modification. And, you know, so if you're using multiplication and then you're doing division, you can use, doing a long division problem, you can use a calculator to solve the mini problems, not to solve the whole thing, if you just want to see if they know how their steps go. So it's having the conversation. And you can have as many IEP meetings or as many parent-teacher conferences as you need.
Just like, I know, Bridget, you're going to say the same thing. Put everything in writing, people.
Right. And it's not just to catch people. It's if you have a phone conversation or if you talk to someone at pickup line, I would immediately go home and say, thank you so much for talking to me today. This is my understanding of what was discussed. You agreed that Timmy could use a calculator. And then the teacher might say, nope, I didn't.
Well, you can look back and say, oh, last year or 6 months ago, you and I had a discussion about this. Here's the discussion. Mm-hmm. Can we relook at this and feel it's important?
Right, and do it in a non-confrontational way. Could you tell me what has changed since the decision made in April?
And I mean, you always catch more flies with sugar, folks.
Yes. Always err on the side of everyone has a good intent.
Bridget, you and I will get into it more when we're done, what to do if they don't follow it. But let's kind of finish up what's the IEP?
So they need current performance level, annual goals with their objectives, special ed services and related services, and aids and fidgets and extended time or books on tape. They need to note participation with non-disabled children. So your child needs to have a component that they will be with non-disabled children or neurotypical, to the degree in which participating with them is not detrimental to your child. Participation in state and district-wide tests, that's a joy. Dates and places and times. So this is in Massachusetts, we have it on the grid, and we always call the grid. The A grid here is consultation times. So when will the consultations start? Who will they be with? And how often will they happen? B grid for us is inclusion. When will these services happen in the classroom? Is speech happening in the classroom? When does it start? When will it end? Is it an extended school year? That's where you get your extended school year times on that grid. You also say 2 times 30, which is 2 times a week, 30 minutes each. Or sometimes they'll say 60 minutes total a week, because some kids, 15 minutes is, you have to lead up to 30 minutes. It depends on, how often you've worked with the child personally. So then we need transition services. So transition services could be at age 14. For Massachusetts, it says age 14 is when you start to plan for after high school. But transition services could also be going from an elementary school into a middle school. And what are some things that need to happen? Elementary. Right. And what kind of things does your child need to visit the school before the end of this year or at the start of next year, or both of those things? Needed transition services. What kind of courses does your child need? What kind of direction, vocational services will your child need to have? Age of majority is when you're 18, and then you can start to sort of call your own shots in preparing everyone, beginning at least 1 year before your child is 18. Those services should start to take place. Another component is how measuring your goals. So your goals need to be measurable. Jimmy will read 6 syllable types with 80% accuracy. I can measure that. We can give lists of words of those 6 syllable types. And if it's 80% accuracy, he's met the goal. If it's 70% accuracy, he's not met the goal. So they need to be measurable.
And clear measurable. I once had a teacher who tried to jumble it. Clearly measured. That way
if you don't understand it, then when you are in the IEP meeting or after you get the IEP, don't reject. I would reach out and say, I do not understand what 80% in 2 out of 5 trials means.
Yep.
Could you please write this goal in a way that is clear to me?
I just want to say real quick, Bridget, Ingrid said that for transition services, some states it's 16 and Mass it's 14.
She's good. As far as progress, you're to be informed of your child's progress as often as a non-disabled child gets informed on their progress. So if you are trimesters, every 3, your child gets 3 report cards, you should be getting 3 progress reports that are directly related to your IEP. And those are the pieces of the puzzle. And I'm going to just put this up here, and it's, I think, a 77-page document, but it's a guide to individualized education program. But it's better to find your in-state organization.
And we will, folks, if you have a problem, remember we're in group. We will help you find your state's resources and kind of go from there.
The one that the link that Jason has shared, when you click on that, you can go to your state.
He's
and you click on state.
You're talking to parentcenterhub.org, right?
Yes, that's the one, Parent Center Hub.
Okay.
That's an easy one. And then it gives you one or two options.
Okay. Oh, and Dennis came up with a good point, Bridget.
He always does.
Feel free to ask how the school sends those progress reports home. That's important to know because I didn't know you had to pick them up for preschool, and I never got.
It depends on every school, on every principal even. Mm-hmm. So some are included in it. The school I taught at, we included the progress reports in with the report cards. So it was just one document they were waiting on.
And like Dennis said, he's had parents who don't get the reports because the child loses it or doesn't give it to them, especially, I mean, little kids, you look through their bag, but as the child ages, they lose it, they forget it. If they're anything like my 16-year-old, they hide it because they don't want to get in trouble.
Right. I think what has happened right now with this whole distance learning and COVID is hopefully the understanding that emailing things is more efficient. And so I would hope that there would be a way for us to be able to give a blanket permission or consent to email documents to parents. And then you've gotten the whole middleman out of the way.
And this is an interesting question that I'm not quite sure of, Bridget. If I move out of the school district, can I still have my IEP daughter stay in the same school she's in?
Only if that district is school choice, and if your child is accepted into school choice.
Okay.
Otherwise, I believe.
Well, we straddle the border between two schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked if I could pick school choice, and I was told, no, we have to go to Clinton. I didn't want to go to the one we went to. I wanted to go to one with better supports, but I was refused.
Right. And so they have the right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What they don't have the right to do is refuse you for school choice because your child is on an IEP.
Right. This is more of a blank. For us, at least, it was a blank. No, the line's right here. You're 2 houses over.
Yep. So it's a community school.
Yep. So, okay, let's get back. Are we done with the IEP, Bridget?
We are. I don't think I made it any easier, but I hope just letting you know the components and that there are resources out there in every state, and they're free. They will cost you nothing.
And guys, feel free. You know that we save all of our videos. They're on our page. They're on our website. If you're going into an IEP meeting and you're nervous, pull out this video. Sit down, watch Bridget and I talk. Pause it when you need to. Take notes. That way you're ready. I usually start prepping 1 to 2 weeks before the meeting.
Right.
Getting my questions.
An important thing. One thing that you mentioned, Jen, when you and I were talking last night, is when I said that in Massachusetts we have a call center with the Federation for Children with Special Needs, and you said, was that just in an emergency? And that was interesting because it does sound like it's a hotline.
Right.
But really what we get is an intake form online. Some states have those. We do here in Massachusetts. Or the number to call. And you can call on a Monday and say, I have an IEP meeting coming up on a Thursday. This Thursday, help, send. Right. And then you get someone to talk to and you can process it through before you go to the meeting. Sometimes you can see if there's pro bono or an advocate that is a private pay advocate or a sliding scale advocate or someone who can just maybe say, I can't make Friday's meeting, but if you extend that date, I could make another meeting. But it's never a hotline as far as don't call in a panic, but know that you can.
Right.
And just say, I don't know what I don't know. I have my first IEP. We've all been at the first IEP.
It's not an emergency. It's more of a full-time resource that you want parents to know is available.
Right. It's mostly parents of children with special needs. Some of us are practitioners. It's lawyers. It runs the whole gamut of experience.
Angela asked, Do you know if I choose a private school, does the public school where the family lives responsible for her IEP? They told us no, the town the school is in had to do it. Oh, I know what she's talking about. She's trying to move her child to a private special education facility.
Yep. Mhm.
And they are not willing to do an IEP. They are saying, and
Because they don't have to at a private school. They don't have to do an IEP because they don't get federal funds.
well, they said they will follow one, but it has to be done by the public school in her town.
Yep.
Is that
So it is true. So she lives, say if she lived in Amesbury, but she wanted her child to go to a school in Newburyport, the Amesbury School District would be the one responsible for writing the IEP.
okay?
They would still provide services, but they don't drive to the Newburyport school. Parents would have to make a schedule, pick up your child, and drive them to Amesbury to receive those services.
Okay. Um, Now, and kind of, we had this discussion a second ago with your call center and how it's not
Mhm.
an emergency, but who can we contact if we need help? I know that there's call centers. I know that there's the resources we've posted on the thing. What can
Mhm.
we do if we need help?
Well, calling all of those things. There's in some states there's free legal hotlines. But I would start with call your special ed liaison. Start with call the people and have a conversation.
Mhm.
Even to say if you're not sure, if you get an assessment report back and it is completely different than what you see your child as, look at the name on that assessment report and call them. Start with that personal conversation.
Okay.
And I would start with the school in a way that is a partnership and say,
Um,
this just doesn't make sense to me.
right. As Ingrid is saying, network, network, network.
Yes. Other
Um,
parents, there are CPACs. So each
mhm.
school has to have a special ed parent advisory council. And so find out if your district has one, contact the president of that, and they'll have networked already. If your district does not have one, start one.
Yep. I know we do not have one, but it
Well, then
is in the
start one,
works.
Jen.
It's in the works.
Okay.
Now I have a question that I asked you personally, and I'm willing to discuss it on the thing. I mean, at the time her IEP was dropped, it was no big deal, like we were discussing.
Mhm.
But now I'm seeing problems. I think they're a lot to do with everything that's going
Right.
on. You and I've discussed that
Mhm.
it's most of you know for Riley, I'm transparent. Not only did Corona hit, but weeks before Corona hit, her best friend died.
Mhm.
So I think since February, we've been spinning out of control.
Right.
And she doesn't have an IEP because they said academically she doesn't need one.
So what I'm going to say to this is I don't think that you're alone, although your circumstances are certainly unfortunate. I don't think you're alone in this idea. And what's happening is schools have said your child is able to do this, so we're moving on. But your child may be able to do it in isolation, but hasn't generalized the skill. So I think what we're finding now is parents who are now teaching their children are saying, she doesn't know that. Why was, this service removed? I'm
Mhm.
still seeing these. So I think it's going to create more parents who should be contacting the school and saying, I'd like a meeting. And IEPs have to be taken into account. Use all of the timelines, all the regulations still exist. They just now exist on Zoom.
And I
The thing that is
actually,
hard to do is assessments, but some assessments can be done.
I mean, it's going to be a learning curve for us and for the people doing the assessments
For
as we try
some,
and figure out how to go into next year.
mhm,
Those new kids coming into the system are going to be the most directly hit.
I don't know. I would be cautious in saying that. I think that everyone's going to take a hit somewhere, regular ed
Everyone
or
is,
special
but
ed.
I think those who need the assessments done,
Right.
because there's no way to, it's so limited.
Right. But there are still behavior rating scales. Parents can still fill those out. And now they're filling them out in a different way. Now they know if their child is organized when they're doing schoolwork because they're having to do schoolwork with them. So it's going to almost give you a better picture because you have more experience with your whole child's learning, not just come home, have snack, have supper, do some homework, go to bed.
Right.
Now you have, more of the day. And if the child had skills in school that they do not present at home, sometimes it's maybe rules are lax at home, but sometimes it's because your child hasn't generalized that skill and hasn't owned it.
Right.
And
And
not required, but depended a lot on their paraprofessional.
right.
And so now you're seeing when they're doing things alone, that skill isn't there. The skill's there really good with the paraprofessional, but she's not at quarantined with you. So
Exactly. And feel free to reach out. Our teacher in the very first week of this new schooling type gave us contact information. Feel free to reach out. I know I have had to reach out, as have multiple kids in our class, neurotypical and special needs. And she actually does Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
I just set one up for her for tomorrow so that I'll put my laptop in front of Riley and her notes on a desk beside her. I'll have the laptop to the side and they'll do the work together.
Right.
She'll get the educational instruction her teacher normally gives for topics I don't know.
Right.
Poetry.
Right.
She has this 2-week-long poetry assignment and it just doesn't make sense. So that's where we're concentrate, because Dad can do math, I can do reading.
But that is a result of you. That is a result of you reaching out and continuing a conversation and a relationship with the teacher.
And also it's a result of us knowing our strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
Poetry. Who can help her where?
Right. Right.
And I think every parent at the beginning of this journey needs to sit down and say, here's my strengths. Here's my weaknesses.
Right.
And then with that, look at your spouse and say, here's your strength. Because my husband and I are totally different people.
Right.
So sorry, he's a goofball sitting beside me trying to make me laugh right now.
Nice.
But you look at...
I'm locked in my...
I wish. This is my living room. My office is my living room. So
nice.
But can they force me to drop the IEP?
Well, it depends on your state. And in some states, parents do not have to give consent for an IEP or services to be stopped.
And guys, I'm going to say, as Bridget talks, this was actually a real conversation last night between Bridget and I that I am sharing with you. And Bridget actually sent me the research papers and showed me, or the state guidelines. And we found out that, unfortunately, in our area, you can get removed from an IEP without being told.
Right. And then it also can impact whether you can even go to mediation for it or, so in those regards, that's when you really need an advocate to be able to say, as I was talking to Jen, yes, they did testing before she was removed from services, but was the testing in the area of her greatest weakness? No.
Right.
So there's some wiggle room in that.
So let me just run to the questions real quick. Angela said that she has multiple children. She has like 8 or 9 children. 9. Buddy didn't qualify for an IEP, but did for autism. Unfortunately, in my state, they don't do that.
What do you mean? I guess I don't understand
some places, and I've seen it because, South Carolina does it, North Carolina doesn't. When we lived in North Carolina, autism didn't mean anything to the school board. So we had to do private preschool, not Head Start preschool. Well, we moved to South Carolina while she was still preschool age. And I went to sign her up for 4K preschool. And that's when we realized that she should have been getting free preschool from the beginning, not based on assessment, but based on the pure and simple fact she had autism.
Yeah, I don't know, because there are so many degrees of autism, high functioning. It really depends on what area of weakness is addressed in it.
See, for
One
us, what they
diagnosis, a
did-
diagnosis doesn't necessarily mean special education.
right. Well, with us in the preschool setting, it was quite different.
Mm-hmm.
They had your regular preschool classes,
Mm-hmm.
and then they had step one. Now, she was in step one for a while. That's the least restrictive,
Okay.
let's call it.
Well, the classroom would
But
be the least restrictive.
yes, it was a classroom it had 2 adults to 10 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then that classroom was not a fit for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to move her to a little bit more restrictive, but she did better.
Okay.
And that was 2 to 6. And instead of only being a half day, it was a full day. And she got that based merely on the fact that she had autism.
Mm-hmm.
But what they do is they'll bump you. Like when we went into step 2, one child that was in step 2 got bumped to step 3, which was more segregated.
Mm-hmm.
They were almost always segregated.
Right.
So, I mean,
It should be based on individual needs, not room available in the class.
yeah, it was individual needs. She was
Yeah.
needing to step up because
Yep.
they start you at the bottom
Okay.
and then you move up.
Yep.
So they start you least restrictive and go forward. So she was just bumping through naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So
So they start you least restrictive and get you to most restrictive?
they start you at least restrictive and then let you go where you need to go.
Okay, so you can go either way to no supports or more
Yes.
supports. Okay.
We went higher in the beginning and then we
Mhm.
dropped way down to lower support
No supports. Yep.
and no support. Sorry, Angela has 11 children, 9 of which are at home.
Oh my goodness.
I know, she is like my superhero mom. I couldn't
That's
do it.
awesome.
And they range from 6 months to teenage to adults.
Wow.
But Dave's sitting here going, no, 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 no.
No. Right.
For him, 4 kids is enough. But I want to thank you, Bridget. We've gone over, but
Very welcome.
I knew that we would go over because this, guys, is the most important conversation I think we've had all month.
Right.
Because you can't advocate for your child if you don't know what you're trying to advocate for.
Except you can try. You can say, I don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
And ask for someone to tell you. There are
Right.
people in the building who know about IEPs, and you can say, this is completely, I don't understand any of this.
Yep.
Before we have the IEP meeting, could someone sit down with me? And school districts want informed parents because it helps give them.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say, throw yourself on the mercy and say, someone walk me through this.
See, I got lucky. We got taken under the wing of the school psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, come in, we'll meet, we'll go over everything.
Right.
And that's when the official autism diagnosis, we had the medical, we didn't have the educational.
Yep. But no matter what part of the process you're in, be honest and say, I'm not sure. What is this?
And if the IEP goal isn't clear, always ask questions. Because if you don't ask questions, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to help your child. And you're going to be stuck still sitting there scratching your head going, but what does this mean?
Right. And schools get in the habit of just using the same format.
Yep.
And
it's
then
so
if someone moves,
cookie cutter.
Right. Right. It's not intended to be. That document should be understood by everyone who reads it. And the most important person to read it is the parent.
I agree. And we're the ones that this is our child.
Right.
This is the child that you have put so much effort into. You're not going to stop putting effort into them now that they're 5 and in kindergarten.
And this is this is the weaknesses. This is like the weakness journal of your child. So you're going to be emotional. You're going to be defensive.
Yep.
So at least be informed.
I always set my IEP meetings up so that before I get her, so that I have enough time that if I'm really upset, I can call my husband, who's usually at work, and cry or vent.
Yeah.
Figure things out.
I always tell parents, let them take the bus home.
Yep.
Because you don't want to, Just you want to be able to call your best friend and say, "Oh,
Oh, trust me, my husband's got many a
yeah,
that IEP meeting went like no.
yeah."
So thank you
All right.
so
Well,
much.
call me back anytime. And I know Dennis feels the same way.
We definitely
Call us
will.
back.
And of course, you're in our parent support group, are you not? I know Dennis is.
I don't think I am, but I can be.
Okay, I'll talk to you in chat later after the show.
Okay.
Because I think you would be a great source, and you and Dennis. And I mean, I know you work with Ingrid, and I
Yes.
think you work with Joanna Larnard.
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 I forgot how to say your name. Larnard. Yeah.
So you have a fan club, but if they want to join, please join. We could always use people for these silly little questions of, is that supposed to be in the IEP? Or what does that word mean? I remember the first time I saw.
Or can I have toileting be in my IEP? Like there's just so many levels to special needs that, yeah.
Well, I remember one, it asked if you need DME. I'm like, what's a DME? Durable medical equipment.
Oh.
Didn't know that. She doesn't need hearing aids. She doesn't need a cane. She doesn't need a walker. So she doesn't need those things. But it was one of the checklists.
She needs friends. And could someone help her make a friend, please?
Yeah. Actually, I'm excited, guys. Riley's excited. I told her last night. I reached out to a friend of hers to get a specific picture of their friend who died. And she sent me a whole bunch of pictures of all the girls together playing.
Oh.
And she goes, Calvary misses you guys so much. Can we be pen pals? So I'm like,
that's
yes,
nice.
we're going to learn by doing pen pals.
And they can do Zoom meetings with each other.
Yep. So my mom works
Very
at the
fun.
school. Mom and dad both work at the school. So I got lucky that the other teacher that was taking the information yesterday emailed that mother because all three of the girls are friends.
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
So
all right, thanks, Jen.
Thank you so much, Bridget, and everyone.
You're very welcome
for joining. I will see you next Thursday. It is still.
And I'll keep looking at the questions.
Yes.
So I can keep answering things as people keep posing.
Guys, if you have questions, keep posting. Bridget is very faithful to going back, making sure questions are answered, making sure you have what you need. So let her know if you need anything. I see Ingrid, Joanna, and Dennis. They're probably all willing to jump in as needed. So, guys, if you have a question, don't keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
There's support. There's help.
Yep.
So thank you all for joining us. I will see you next Thursday. Bridget, this has been a great month. I've loved it.
I know.
Thank you to you and Dennis both. It was kind of funny. We had it all set up. We were going to do all month with both of you together.
I know.
And then Corona came and we did this.
Hey, when you know better, you do better.
Well, at least we are still giving the parents the information they need during this time.
Agreed.
And now, folks, you can take the IEP information, and as soon as your school opens up and says, we're getting ready for IEPs for next year, you're ready.
Schools have to be doing it now.
Yep.
Don't wait.
So thank you all so very much for coming. I will see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And remember, until then, support, empower, educate. Bye, guys.
Toodles.